When someone chooses to hurt a woman who is genuinely invested, who showed up with her full heart, with loyalty, with care, that wound doesn't just disappear. Emotional pain doesn't function like a physical injury. You can't bandage it up and wait for the scar to fade. Emotional wounds echo. They replay in the mind, in the memory, in the self-worth of the person who was left hurting. And the deeper truth is, people often underestimate the impact of the damage they cause when they break someone's heart carelessly. A man may walk away thinking it was just a relationship that didn't work, or worse, that she'll get over it. But relationships aren't math equations. You don't just remove one number and go on with the answer unchanged. When a person builds emotional intimacy with someone, especially when she makes herself vulnerable, opens up her soul, allows someone into the parts of her life that are guarded from the world, that's not casual. That's not something you just toss aside. Now, what we often see in these situations is this. The one who caused the hurt usually moves on faster. Why? Because avoidance is easy, because denial is comforting, because distraction is convenient. But the one who was truly present in the relationship, the one who loved deeply, is left picking up the emotional pieces. She's forced to confront the pain. She's the one sitting with the sleepless nights, the racing thoughts, the overanalyzing of every conversation, every moment, wondering what went wrong. What many don't understand is that heartbreak has layers. It's not just about missing someone, it's about doubting your judgment, questioning your worth, feeling foolish for believing in someone who didn't respect or reciprocate that belief. When a man hurts a good woman, he isn't just leaving her alone. He's leaving her with a series of invisible battles, rebuilding trust, regaining confidence, reestablishing her sense of emotional safety. And here's where it gets deep. The person who does the hurting often walks away without absorbing the gravity of what they've done. That's because they aren't present for the fallout. They don't see her standing in front of the mirror questioning whether she's not good enough. They don't hear the conversations she has with her best friend, crying over why she wasn't valued. They don't see her pretending to be fine at work, smiling through the pain, just trying to keep it together. You see, hurting someone emotionally isn't just about the moment it happens. It's about the chain reaction it causes. People carry those wounds into the next relationship, into their self-talk, into their decisions. The woman who once believed in love may now be guarded. The woman who once trusted openly may now build walls. And that is the tragedy of being carelessly hurt. It doesn't just affect the present, it warps the future. And let's be clear, this doesn't mean that every relationship has to work out. Breakups are sometimes necessary. But there is a huge difference between ending a relationship with honesty, clarity, and care, and emotionally ghosting, gaslighting, or manipulating someone into believing they weren't enough. The first is maturity. The second is cowardice disguised as convenience. Unfortunately, many people don't learn the weight of their actions until much later, when the temporary thrill fades, when the distractions run out, and they are forced to sit with themselves. That's often when the realization begins to dawn. She was actually amazing. I didn't handle that right. She didn't deserve that. But by then, the damage is done. The pain was already paid by someone else's heart. Now, here's what's truly educational about this. Emotional damage is not just about hurt. It's about power. The power to shape someone's emotional identity. And that's why it's so important to take responsibility for how we exit people's lives. Because the way you leave someone speaks more about you than it does about them. A man who hurt a woman and walked away thinking it would be forgotten, thinking it was just another chapter in his dating history, often forgets this. People remember how you made them feel. That memory, that emotional residue, it lingers. And while he may move on externally, deep down, he knows when he handled it poorly. That awareness, sometimes buried beneath ego or pride, stays with him. Because here's the irony, when you hurt someone who was real with you, that action doesn't go away just because you've started dating someone else. Emotional damage, whether admitted or not, becomes part of your story. And eventually, life has a way of mirroring our actions back to us. Whether it's through failed connections, emotional unavailability, or those long nights where you wonder why you can't connect the same way anymore, there comes a moment where the one who caused the damage finally feels a version of what they inflicted. That's not revenge. That's just the natural law of emotional accountability. And for the woman who's been hurt, the power begins not in wishing him pain, but in recognizing that his actions were never a reflection of her worth. Because someone who truly knows the value of another person doesn't destroy them to feel strong, and someone who does eventually learns, too late, what they lost. Karma doesn't always arrive like thunder. It doesn't always knock on the door with a dramatic entrance or immediately punish someone the moment they do wrong. That's what makes it powerful. Karma is subtle, it's strategic. It understands something most people don't, that the greatest consequences are the ones we feel internally, not the ones others can see. When someone hurts another person, especially someone who loved them sincerely, they often think they've escaped any kind of reckoning. They think walking away cleanly means they're free, no consequences, no guilt, no lesson. But karma doesn't work on our schedule. It works on truth's timeline. It waits until the noise of ego dies down, until the distractions fade, until the silence gets loud enough that the consequences can finally be heard. And that's when it begins. It might start subtle, like moments of regret creeping in when they see you smiling without them. It might hit them in the late hours of the night when their new relationship feels surface level, lacking the depth they once took for granted. Or it might show up in the form of opportunities that feel empty, moments that feel incomplete, or new people who fail to spark anything real. Karma has a way of using time as a mirror. It reflects who we were back at us, but only when we're truly ready to see it. You can run from guilt. You can distract yourself with flings, with work, with social validation. But you can't outrun self-awareness forever. Eventually, the memory of how you treated someone catches up. Not in a loud way, but in a way that quietly unsettles you. This is especially true for someone who hurt a good-hearted person. Someone who was patient, loving, invested. At the time, they might have dismissed her kindness as ordinary, her loyalty as expected, her emotional depth as too much. But as time goes on and they interact with people who aren't as genuine, who aren't as emotionally generous, that contrast starts to sting. That's karma whispering, remember what you had. You won't find that again until you evolve. You see, people often believe karma is just payback. That it's about something bad happening to someone because they did something wrong. But karma is more elegant than that. It doesn't always show up as tragedy or misfortune. Sometimes it's the absence of what they once had. It's the realization that they had someone extraordinary and didn't value them until it was too late. The greatest karma is not punishment, it's perspective. Imagine a man who took a woman's love for granted, who toyed with her emotions, made promises he never intended to keep, or led her on when he knew she was serious. He walks away thinking he's in control, that he made the call, that he won, but weeks, months later, he sees her glow. Not just a superficial glow-up, but real, soulful healing. She's thriving, she's focused, she's smiling with her eyes again, and more importantly, she's not looking back. That's when karma strikes, not because she's trying to hurt him, but because her growth highlights his lack of it. Because her peace shows him what he gave up, and in that moment he realizes he wasn't the strong one for walking away. He was the weak one for not staying, for not stepping up, for not evolving. Karma educates. It doesn't just punish, it teaches, and one of the biggest lessons it teaches is this: you don't get to hurt someone who was real and then find realness again without doing the inner work. You can't go through life leaving emotional wreckage and expect to build something meaningful on top of that. You may fool the world for a while, even yourself, but your soul keeps score. The beauty of karma is that it often uses stillness as its weapon, that feeling of emotional emptiness in the middle of everything going well. That moment when you look around at what you've built and still feel like something's missing. That's not bad luck. That's karma showing you that character matters, that emotional integrity matters, that how you treat people has a way of looping back even if it takes time. And for the person who was hurt, there's an empowering lesson here too. You don't have to chase justice. You don't have to orchestrate revenge or closure. Life has its own way of creating balance. Your job is to grow, to keep showing up for yourself, to rise so high that your healing becomes the very thing they never expected to see. That's the most poetic part of all of this, because karma's real power isn't about revenge, it's about revelation. And by the time he sees the truth, you'll have already moved beyond needing his apology. You'll understand that what felt like the end of your story was just the beginning of your strength, and the karma he receives, that's not your burden to carry, that's his reflection to sit with. There's a misconception that the best way to get back at someone who hurt you is to make them feel the same pain, that if they made you cry, you should show them what it's like to be broken too. But that path doesn't lead to peace, it leads to cycles. Cycles of bitterness, of wasted energy, of waiting for someone else's downfall instead of creating your own rise. What most people never understand until much later is that the most powerful and lasting form of revenge isn't about inflicting pain, it's about growth. Growth is silent. It doesn't need to announce itself. It's not posted for validation or dressed up for social media. It's happening when you finally delete the message you were never going to send. When you stop stalking his feed to see if he's hurting. When you wake up one day and realize he's no longer the first thought in your head. That is power, quiet, grounded, undeniable power. When someone hurts you, especially someone you love deeply, your natural instinct is to prove something. To prove you were worth keeping, to prove they made a mistake. But growth teaches you that you have nothing to prove to someone who couldn't see your value in the first place. You don't evolve to impress them. You evolve because you deserve better, not just better treatment, but a better relationship with yourself. And here's where it gets real. Growth is hard, it's not glamorous, it doesn't feel good every day. Healing requires facing things you'd rather suppress, the disappointment, the rejection, the anger, the shame. But the more you lean into those feelings, the more you understand that the pain they caused can either define you or refine you. It can either keep you stuck in the story of how they hurt you, or it can be the reason you never settle again. What makes growth the most powerful response is that it takes back control. When someone hurts you, it's easy to feel powerless, to feel like they had the last word, the final say, the upper hand. But every time you choose your peace over your pride, every time you work on yourself instead of fixating on them, you're reminding the world, and yourself, that you're the author now. You're not waiting for them to come back, to explain, to fix it. You're building a new chapter without needing their pen, and here's something they don't expect. Your evolution. They expect you to break. They expect you to spiral, to chase, to cling. But when you rise, when you transform into someone wiser, more self-aware, more fulfilled, that's what stings. Because deep down, they know they had the best version of you before you even knew who you were becoming. And now, the version you're becoming. They'll never have access to that. Growth is powerful because it repositions the entire emotional dynamic. You're no longer reacting to them. You're rising beyond them. You don't need to tell them they hurt you. Your peace speaks louder. You don't need to show them you're okay. Your energy, your joy, your glow, it says everything they need to hear, even if they're not around to hear it. And let's be honest, people do notice. Even if they pretend they don't. Even if they don't reach out. Even if they act indifferent. When you begin to grow, when you begin to walk differently, speak differently, carry yourself with strength and self-respect, that ripple travels. Mutual friends notice. New people enter your life. Doors start opening that once seemed closed. And most importantly, you start seeing yourself through a new lens, not as someone who was broken, but as someone who rebuilt herself stronger. That's what emotional growth gives you, the gift of perspective. You stop seeing the heartbreak as your identity. You stop blaming yourself. You stop replaying the past as if it's a film you can edit. Instead, you start living in the present. You start focusing on what you're building, who you're becoming, what you truly want moving forward. Because here's the truth. If you stay stuck trying to make someone regret losing you, then they're still controlling your story. But if you grow, if you focus inward, if you invest in yourself, if you level up emotionally, spiritually, mentally, you win in a way they can never touch. You no longer need their remorse. You don't wait for their karma. Because the life you're creating is your closure, your healing is your justice, your happiness is your statement. And let me be crystal clear, growth doesn't mean you're perfect. It means you're progressing. It means you're no longer acting from the pain they caused, but from the love you've found within yourself. That's not just healing, that's evolution, that's freedom. So when someone asks, what did you do after he hurt you? The most powerful answer isn't, I made him regret it. The answer is, I made myself proud. There's something incredibly misunderstood about closure. Most people think it's a conversation, that if they could just ask one more question, get one more explanation, hear one more apology, it would all make sense. The pain would finally leave and they could move on. But real closure rarely comes from someone else. It comes from you. And ironically, the moment you truly start to let go is the exact moment they begin to feel the consequences of their actions. When someone hurts you and walks away, especially if they do it without empathy, without honesty, without facing the impact, they believe that their story with you is over, that once you stop calling, once you stop showing emotion, the connection disappears. But what they don't realize is that letting go isn't a sign that you no longer feel, it's a sign that you've chosen yourself. It's a decision rooted in strength, not indifference. Letting go doesn't mean you weren't hurt. It doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you've reached a point where your peace matters more than trying to fix something that was never in your control. You begin to accept that you can't force someone to understand what they refuse to acknowledge. You stop trying to rewrite the story. You stop asking why someone couldn't love you properly. And in that space, where your energy shifts back to yourself, that's where the real healing begins. But here's the twist. That's also the moment when their lesson starts. You see, people often think they can escape accountability just by leaving, by avoiding confrontation, by ghosting, deflecting, or moving on to someone new. But emotional lessons don't operate on physical timelines. You can leave someone's life, but you can't run from the truth of how you treated them. And the moment you truly let go emotionally, mentally, spiritually, they feel the absence of what they once had. Not immediately, not loudly, but it comes. It comes when their distractions stop working. It comes when their new connection doesn't offer the same emotional depth. It comes when they try to connect with someone else and realize it doesn't feel the same. Because they're no longer being met with the same kind of love, patience, or understanding they once received from you. The moment you let go is the moment they start to realize they lost something real. And what makes this so impactful is that it's not intentional on your part. You're not doing it to get a reaction. You're not letting go as a strategy to make them miss you. You're doing it because your soul needs peace, because you're done waiting for someone else to give you the validation you deserve, because you've finally understood that closure is self-created, and this is what most people don't talk about. Emotional absence is louder than emotional chaos. When someone's used to your energy, your messages, your check-ins, your warmth, they start to feel the difference when you stop. At first, they'll pretend not to notice. They'll scroll past your stories. They'll avoid your name, but silence has a way of echoing. They'll notice when you stop reaching out. They'll notice when you stop engaging. They'll notice that the attention, the reassurance, the love, they once took for granted is gone. And that absence begins to speak to them in a way your words never could. By the time you've let go, you're already on a new path. You're building, you're healing, you're reconnecting with the version of yourself that existed before they hurt you, and upgrading her. That shift changes your energy. It changes the way you walk into a room. It changes what you tolerate. It changes what you're attracted to. You're no longer looking backward. You're focused on what's next. And that's when the dynamic flips. They start to wonder if you ever really needed them at all. They start to question whether they were as important to you as they assumed. They replay old conversations in their mind, wondering how they didn't see what they had. That's karma working quietly, patiently, and it all begins the moment you stop waiting for them to get it. Because here's the truth. People don't start missing you when you leave. They miss you when you stop showing up emotionally. When they realize you're no longer giving them access to your thoughts, your time, your heart, and that realization that you've moved on and grown without needing anything from them is the one thing they can't undo. And so, you let go not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring about you more. You release the need for them to understand. You stop expecting them to fix it. You detach not out of coldness, but out of clarity. And in that clarity, you gain everything they lost, the power, the growth, the peace, because real transformation happens not when you seek revenge or demand closure, but when you evolve in silence and let life do the talking.